Hey everyone, Mr. Wineland here. We are in chapter 16, section 3 of our first chapter about World War II, and we're getting into the Holocaust today. Very serious subject, so hopefully you will listen and understand what has happened here in the past. But the thing about this story, and like I said, there's a reason why we need to know about the Holocaust because we hope that it never happens again. But sadly, as we've talked about, sometimes history continues to repeat itself because we don't learn the lessons from the previous past. So we kind of have to learn this story a little bit and learn about what happened, so we hopefully never have to deal with such a major tragedy again. But we'll talk more about that at the end of the lesson. But like I said, what happened is Adolf Hitler was taking over Germany, and Hitler had some really strange beliefs, and a lot of it was, an idea of, hey, we're tired of the republic, we're tired of our German government not working, and we're going to take our hands in our own, take the power into our own hands, and like we said, Hitler, even though he was arrested, he got out and he was able to run for chancellor, and he won illegally. He won legally. So, but eventually, people were so desperate, so hungry, so just starving and looking for any sort of hope that they chose someone who was into violence and hurting others. And we see that happening here. As on April 7th, 1933, once Hitler took power, he kind of brought in this idea of an Aryan race, basically a master race. And he had this weird idea of what's German, what's not a German. And so anybody non-Aryan, which he viewed, as to be almost non-German, he had them removed from any government jobs. This also moved into a campaign for racial purity, which means that getting rid of some of these non-Aryans, which led to the Holocaust, the systematic murder of 6 million Jews across Europe. And so the Nazis also murdered 5 million other people. And that's something that a lot of times gets overlooked, but we're going to talk more about it. So your definition for Nuremberg laws is right here in blue. So basically a lot, during this time, during the Great Depression, the Germans were struggling financially. And, there was a lot of people who were struggling and couldn't figure out why am I having a hard time finding a job? How come I've lost all my money here? And so when Hitler comes in, he tries to do what he can to not blame the people. But, it's kind of hard to blame others when, they're part of the problem. So to kind of divert before trying to divert that truth, he distracts the people by saying, "Oh, look over there! See those group of people over there, the Jewish community. They're the reason why we have the Great Depression." And so he starts to target them and really use anti-Semitic hatred words to the Jews, and really use that long history against the Jews in this situation to blame the Jewish people for make them a scapegoat for all the Germans' problems. When it's really goes back to World War One, it goes back to also the fact that they had to pay, for their crimes for starting World War One, or at least being a part of that. So that played a big part. And the other thing too is Hitler uses long history of Europe not liking Jews. I mean, this, especially in Germany. I mean, this goes back to the plague. The Jews were viewed as a scapegoat back then for the reason why the plague was happening. And some Jewish communities were actually burned to the ground because of that. So that rhetoric. So Hitler kind of uses this as fuel to get people to really not, to really be hated or hate the Jews. And so Hitler found that the majority of Germans were willing to support this belief, and basically viewed the belief that the Jews were the reason why for the failures after World War One. And he created Nuremberg laws, which basically stripped Jews of their German citizenship, jobs, and property. So you had Jewish individuals who were Germans. They were born in Germany. They spoke German. They were German, but they just happened to be a part of the heritage of, and a religion they unfortunately that identified them as non-German. So, and then to make it easier to identify the Jews, they had to wear a Star of David on a patch on their clothes so people could see. Then on November 9th through the 10th of 1938, there was Kristallnacht, which was the night of broken glass, where the Nazi stormtroopers basically attacked Jewish homes, businesses, synagogues across the German and Austria. A chance to break and use violence to basically go after the Jews and really mess with them and hurt them. And eventually they blamed the Jewish community for actually for all the damage, even though it wasn't them. And then also, too, opponents were killed, too, of Hitler's that made it a lot easier for him to push people around and get people to believe him and get what he wanted. Then we start to see as number 17 is right here, everything in blue. If you have to pause, go right ahead. But Kristallnacht basically was a step up to the Nazi plan of how they were going to handle the persecution of the Jewish community. And so we start to see they start to make things more difficult for the Jewish community. And so Jews are starting to figure out a way to flee and go into different countries. Some of them go to France, go to Britain. Some try to go to the United States. The problem is the United States did not want to accept many Jews. They already had an immigration issue that a lot of the people were frustrated with immigration over the past 30 years before this. And, there was a big knock against Europeans, and especially those coming from certain parts of Europe. And then with you throw in the Great Depression, where men are struggling, trying to find jobs. They're afraid that if you bring the Jewish community over here, then that's going to mean more jobs lost. So there was this view. And even though the United States knew that they were being persecuted, they kind of chose basically to not help people in order to protect their own. Now, that didn't mean that they didn't accept certain Jews. They did. They accepted 100,000 refugees into the United States. But unfortunately, some of these were exceptional people, persons of exceptional merit. So people like Albert Einstein, author Thomas Mann, architect Walter Gropius, theologian Paul Tillich. So if you had basically a skill or something useful for the United States, they're like, yeah, come on over. But the average Jewish individual, sorry, you have to stay in Germany. And also, a lot of Americans did not like this immigration policy to bring these Jewish individuals in, like I said, because they're afraid of the economic recovery and what that would do. And so there was a lot of anti-Semitic language being thrown around, fear-mongering to prevent Jews from coming over, in a very sad moment in life. But President Roosevelt, again, sympathized with the Jewish community, but again, he was going to do anything he could to not hurt the future of American citizens. And so he kind of chose protecting jobs for Americans and not saving the lives of Jews. And that leaves a very dark mark on FDR's legacy. I mean, I get it. In one sense, you have the Great Depression and you want to protect your own citizens and making sure they get what they need. But on the other hand, you want to help these people. And so you're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place. And so sometimes you don't always make the best decision. So France already had 40,000 Jew refugees. Britain took on some more, about 80,000. Britain also controlled the Palestine Mandate, which was part of Israel today. And so they accepted 30,000 refugees. But late in 1938, Foreign Minister Joachim von Ribbentrop observed, we all want rid of our Jews, and the difficulty is that no country wishes to receive them. And so he really kind of put a bad, marking here that basically kind of, in some ways, he brought up a little bit of truth. That yes, certain countries didn't want to take on a lot of these refugees, but again, the timing of it was really bad. With the Great Depression, it really hurt. It really hurt everybody. It hurt everybody. It hurt, everyone. And so it became very difficult for leaders to make very tough decisions. And so very difficult timing for the Jewish community at this time. So anyway, very difficult time for that. Also, during this time, this was a very bad look for America during this time, as there were cases of one particular case and the evidence of the ship of St. Louis The German liner passed through Miami in 1939 with 740 of the liner's 943 passengers had U.S. immigration papers. They were able to, if they got off the boat, they were able to get through immigration, but the Coast Guard kept following the ship, preventing anyone from disembarking America. And so the ship ended up returning back to Europe. And the crews of the St. Louis wrote to the New York, and then wrote the New York Times, cries to high heaven of the man's humanity to man, inhumanity to man. And many of the passengers on there basically had half of the people died in the Holocaust. So very sad marking. Number 19 is here in blue about the final solution. So by 1939, Hitler had a new plan that was ultimately some of his top men concocted this plan to basically rid the Jews forever, which was called the final solution. And it was to kind of rid them from Europe. And Hitler imposed what he called the final solution, a policy of genocide, the deliberate and systematic killing of an entire population. We see that Hitler's final solution rested on the belief that Aryans were a superior people, and the strength of purity as the master race must be preserved. So basically, what he did is Nazis condemned to slavery and death as not only the Jews but other groups they viewed as inferior. So they used slavery. Condemned. Sorry, they condemned the Jews to slavery and death, and not only Jews but other groups were also attacked. After taking power in 1933, the Nazis basically looked for any other groups that could possibly be opposition. So socialists, communists, liberals, anyone who spoke out against them were basically put in this camp. Once the Nazis had eliminated these enemies, they turned against other groups in Germany. In addition to the Jews, these groups included the following: Gypsies. They viewed them as an inferior race. Freemasons, whom they charged as supporters of the Jewish conspiracy. And then Jehovah's Witnesses, which basically do not believe in joining the army. So some of them were also thrown in here too. Also, homosexuals were also forced into the Holocaust as well. The mentally ill were killed, and physically disabled were killed as well. So Hitler began implementing the final solution in Poland with a special Nazi death squad known as the Security Squadron, the SS Squadron. Rounded up Jews, men, women, children, babies, and shot them on the spot. Jews were also ordered to overcrowded ghettos and segregated areas. In blue here is number 18. And so the Nazis obviously sealed off the ghettos and barbed wire and stone walls, couldn't get them out. They were forced to work in factories. A lot of bodies piled up for many days because of the poor conditions. But we do see that they did have a movement in the ghettos. They did, publish or distribute underground newspapers. They had secret schools to educate their children, and they had even a theater and music groups to operate and entertain people to kind of just survive. And finally, Jews communities were ultimately sent off to concentration camps, where these labor camps where people were sent there to work until they died. Families were often separated. Sometimes, like Weissman's, they were gone forever. So this was a big time. The big time in the Jewish Holocaust, where some families were wiped out. I showed a video in class where a man basically, when he showed up his first day, he was separated from his family. I think his mother and his father, and I believe it was his 6 siblings. And basically, all 8 of them died except for him. So his whole family was wiped out in day one. So it was pretty sad what they did, and disgraceful what the Nazis did. So basically, a lot of them would imprison political opponents. It's kind of something you see even today in Russia, what's happening with what's going on there. And then also they expanded the camps and put people in warehouses, made them work. Cycle of hunger, humiliation, work almost always until you pretty much died. Also, the prisoners were crammed in really crude wooden barracks with thousands of people, shared crowded quarters, had meager meals, there's hordes of rats and fleas in this. One survivor recalled that basically sometimes if you spilled soup was spilled, prisoners would converge on the spot and dig their spoons in, even into the mud and stuff that are the mess with into their mouths. So that's how desperate people were, and so it was very bad. And some people were killed if they collapsed, and just a really awful time in this moment. And so, very rough time. The final solution eventually made it to final stage in the early 1942. We see at the meeting held in Wannsee, lakeside suburb in Berlin, Hitler basically went on to his next phase to murder more Jewish individuals. And so the slaughter method of killing would turn to poisonous gas. As deadly as overwork and starvation and beatings and bullets were, they didn't kill the community the Jewish community fast enough. The Nazis weren't satisfied, and so they built camps in Poland and first in Chelmno, began operating in 1941 before meeting at Wannsee. And basically, each camp had gas chambers, and they would basically stuff as many individuals in one as 12,000 people could be killed in a day just by gassing them. And then when prisoners arrived at Auschwitz, the largest death camps, they had a parade by several SS doctors, and some would wave a few and separated the strong from the weak, and the weak would ultimately be killed. Those destined to die were then led into a room outside a gas chamber where they were told to undress for a shower, that they were given soap, and they believed that, oh, we're taking a shower, you'll be fine. But they were poisoned, and it was through the shower heads the gas came out. And at first the bodies were buried, but then eventually it became difficult to bury all the bodies. So then they created mass graves. And then after that, they decided just to burn the bodies with big ovens. So a lot of other camps, they throw them in the pit and set them on fire. Gassing was not only the only method of extermination at the camps. Prisoners were also shot, hanged, injected with poison. Some were even experimented on, and that was very cruel. So apparently, an estimated 6 million Jews had died in the camps through the massacres, which is, and some were able to escape the worst of the Holocaust, but many people died. Many had help from ordinary people, though, who were appalled by what the Nazis' treatment of the Jews. Some Jews were able to survive, but very sad. Some Jews even survived the horrors of the concentration camps. Some Jews, like a very small number, were able to not even go through the concentration camps and able to survive, and they were lucky ones. And then some other lucky ones who were able to make it through the concentration camps, but they were definitely damaged and hurt and traumatized for the rest of their lives. And those who did not come out of the camps, those who did come out, definitely ever changed, and as for what they witnessed. And and like I said, I mean, this is we're to learn this so that hopefully it would never happen again. But in some ways, it is happening again in Syria, where the government is killing the rebels or citizens who are on the other side of their civil war. And not only are they killing them with their own weapons, but they're also taking pictures and making evidence of what they're doing. So it's kind of Syria's own version of the Holocaust, killing certain Islamic individuals that they deemed inferior, basically. And so very similar to what the Nazis did, they documented too the Holocaust of basically showing their evidence of what they did, which was sick and just awful. But the good news is that when we do get to the end of the war, we will talk about some survivors who do get out, but it definitely damaged a community, and it's definitely a mark that will continue to affect many from years to come, and hopefully we never forget, and hopefully we learn from this. But anyway, just thought we need to talk about that. It's a big part of the lesson, as we're going to talk more about the United States entering the war and or getting close to entering the war. And we'll talk about that in section 4. See you on the other side of that.